Let me get my screen shared. Can everyone see the screen? We're good to go? All right. So I really thought I should name this the reason why my hair is turning gray. But we won't do that. We'll just call it the board workshop, and we're going to talk about the budget. So we all ready?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Slide number 2 corresponds with page 1 of your documentation packet. The revenue for the 2020-2021 fiscal year is in the far right column. The peach highlighted rows are our local tax collections, and the green highlighted rows represent the state funding. Notice NIFA, which stands for the new instructional facility allotment under the 2021 column, is blank. Last year was the year that we opened Barnett, so we received our allotment. This year we will not have an allotment. Also, to remind you that there is an inverse relationship between local funding and state funding, which we'll talk about next. So slide 3 represents the amount of funding school districts get. So think of the amount of revenue any Texas ISD will receive as an empty cylinder. The maximum amount any ISD can receive is what fits in their size cylinder. ISDs that can't generate all of their own revenue, the state provides the remaining portion of the revenue. Each ISD has a tax base that assesses and collects taxes from property owners. For 2019-20, Santa Fe ISD collected about 40% of our own revenue from our tax base. The state provided approximately 60% of the remaining revenue. As an ISD property tax base grows, so does its ability to collect more revenue, so the state reduces its portion of support. This system works really well with growing communities. As we talk about revenue, we're going to also need to talk about the relationship between the appraisal district, the Texas Comptroller's Office, and the entity's tax assessor system. The GCAD is our Galveston Central Appraisal District. They appraise the property in Galveston County. GCAD sends the appraisal notices to the property owner and Santa Fe ISD tax assessor. There's lots of details to this process. There are limits to how much a taxing entity, Santa Fe ISD, can tax, and there are exceptions and exemptions. And we'll see a few of the reports from GCAD in a minute, which clearly show the market value of the property in our school district and the taxable value of the same property. Texas school districts can only tax up to 10% of the change in the property value each year. So if a property appreciates by 12%, Santa Fe ISD can only tax 10% of that increase. There are also exceptions and exemptions in homestead ceilings. As long as if you are 65 and older, you will have a homestead, you will be exempt from your taxes changing or getting any higher. They'll be frozen in value, as long as you don't make any changes to the property and you own the property. So these exceptions and these exemptions and these ceilings, that's what makes up the difference between market value and taxable value. And we'll see that on the corresponding reports. The Texas Comptroller's Office audits the GCAD appraisal district calculation and determines, based on the statewide study, what your value should be at each school district. The school district certified appraisal value from the Comptroller's Office must fall within 5% of what the state Comptroller's Office say the value should be. The Comptroller's property study is conducted every 2 years unless a district has failed a property study in the prior years, and then the study must be valid for 2 consecutive years before the cycle returns to every 2 years of auditing. If the school district's values are declared invalid, the district must appeal the decision. If the appeal is not accepted by the state Comptroller's Office, the state will withhold state funding from the school district. If the state declares the property value valid, all is good and no funding is lost. So all school districts in Galveston County, except for one, had invalid property studies in 2019 as per the comptroller's office. Santa Fe ISD's value were 94% of the comptroller's value. GCAD filed an appeal on our behalf, asking the comptrollers to review the value so that we could become in line with the state study. We do not have the results of that appeal yet. So the local appraisal district appraises the property. The school district takes those appraisals and we assess the taxes on that property and we collect the taxes. And then the state comptroller's office audits our actual property values to make sure that all the counties throughout Texas are appraising property consistently. The comptroller's office withholds funds and penalizes the school district when the appraisal district doesn't comply with the comptroller standards. So as a point of reference, we have about 403 accounts on our tax rolls that have exemptions due to disabled persons. That's about 2%. And we have about 13% of our accounts are over 65 ceilings. Altogether, we have 17,047 accounts on the Santa Fe ISD tax certified rolls. Also, one of the things that you should keep in mind as a warning flag is declining property values. And as you can tell in the reports that we're about to see, that our property values have continued to increase and that we're in a real good place with appreciation of value. So slide 6 also corresponds with page 4 of your documentation. This is the 2018 certified totals. And I'm only showing you this so we can compare the information between years. On the reports from GCAD, notice there's a market value column and a taxable value column. The exceptions and the ceilings and the 10% ceiling, that's the difference between the two columns. The new value means new homes were added to the tax rolls in the case of category A, single family residence. I used an average home price of $250,000 to create a baseline comparison to other years. So for 2018, if the average home price being built was $250,000, then roughly 80 new homes were built in the Santa Fe ISD area. Slide 7 or page 5 of your documentation show the 2009 certified values. Using the same estimate baseline, there were roughly 110 new homes during the 2009 tax year. So again, you have the market value, the taxable value, reflected in Santa Fe's area and on our tax rolls, and we only can tax on the taxable value, not on the market value. But we can tell between 2018 and 2019, we definitely had more new values added to the rolls in the home on the home category. That's between those 2 years. In slide 8 on page 6 of your documentation show the 2020 preliminary totals. And if we use the same baseline, there were roughly 160 new homes in our area. Notice the increase in taxable value. These numbers are pre-ARB review. That means that the information is before that the appeals were filed by the taxpayers. Taxpayers can appeal the appraisal notice, and we have accounted for that process in our estimates. Slide 9 or page 7 on your documentation is the 2019 tax estimate used from the 2019 certified and supplemental figures. 14,802,319 is a good estimate. We're roughly at about 97% collected to date. We post the collections for July and August back to June because we use the modified accounting rule. So this is the process we use when we take the appraisal district's information and we apply our tax rate to it. So on slide number 10, this is the 2020 tax estimates using the 2020 preliminary values from GCAD. This is the number before appeals have been filed. This is using the tax rate of 0.9664, which includes 220 rollback amount plus another golden penny for a total of 5 golden pennies. The golden pennies represent a special calculation that does not penalize the district to receive state funding. The school district receives maximum funding with golden pennies. Notice at the bottom in the box, it says $17,566,088. We're not estimating anything close to that amount in our revenue projections because this is before appeals. So slide 11 is really the same as slide 2. This is what we started out with. And notice where it says the local tax, which is object code 5711, we're estimating at $16,050,000. So when we did the calculations, it was much higher because we are building in that cushion for appeals. So again, this is how we get our calculations for our local side of our values on our revenues. Our state values and our state funding comes from when we take all this information and we plug it into the state template, and it will give us what we can expect to receive. And again, this is just estimates. And it can change as our numbers of students changes, or if we receive more students, or students leave or don't come back, or our ADA begins to fluctuate. And slide 12 shows the timeline of how GCAD and the school districts work together to appraise, assess, and collect taxes for the year.
Okay, so that was quite a bit of information, and if there's any questions, we'll take a brief pause and we'll discuss anything that you would like to talk about from those slides.
Ms. Townsend, I have a question for you. When this happened 5 years ago, refresh my memory, did the GCAD ask the state for any exemption for Santa Fe, or was that all strictly, I know we ended up having to get attorneys to go fight that, but we pretty much fought that one on our own because it was only us that year that had this happen. Is that correct?
Well, it was our second year. It was the second year of invalids. The first year GCAD represented us, and that didn't go well. So the second year we had to hire an attorney. We were past the 5%.
That's right.
So we had no choice because we were going to lose about $2 million. Of
course, I guess this time there's several other districts in this boat as well. And I think we're in better shape than about 3 or 4 of them, it looked like. So we'll see where this all comes out.
Yes, so that's correct. We're at about 94% valid. So we don't have a whole lot to go to get us over the top to the 95%, but Texas City, Dickinson ISD, and Galveston, yes, they are really struggling to get closer to that 5% mark.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Townsend on this?
And Ms. Townsend, this presentation, which I thought was nicely done, this will be available for the public to see on our website?
Yes, sir. We'll post it on the business website. We posted the last one. So yes, sir. We'll continue with that pattern.
Thank you so much, Ms. Townsend.
Any other questions?
Okay, we're going to take a look at expenditures next. And again, I apologize I didn't say it at the beginning. We'll do a few slides and then pause and do a few more and pause. So you'll get plenty of opportunities to ask questions, and please just let me know if you have any. So we'll continue. If I can get there.
Slide 14 is a summary of the expenditures for 2021. We'll look at the detail in later slides. Page 9A of the documentation is a reminder of how we are transitioning from the 2019-20 fiscal year to the 2020-21 fiscal year. We are covering the expenditure shortfall with the 2018-19 ADA adjustment given by the state. We received the adjustment funds in 1920 and assigned the funds into the fund balance for this purpose. Slide 15 is 87% of our budget. This includes a 3% raise on the midpoint for our 2021 employees, and that is included in the budget. Notice that this is all the benefits, all of the expenditures that go along with the payroll, and again, it's about 87% of the total budget. Slide 16 represents the function level proposed budget. All budgets must be adopted at least on the function level. We will look at the changes between the functions in detail on the next slide. We have a balanced budget. Again, the revenue will shift between local and state revenue. Also notice in function 71, we paid off the notes payable for the energy project. And as a reminder, we will have a July 2020 budget amendment that will reestablish the expenditure budget that was not included in the original budget. Slide 17 reflects each function broken down by the object code. This system is used by the state of Texas, so all Texas school districts can be compared to each other financially through the data collection process known as TSDS and better known as P. Function 11 is our instructional function. The first row is 61XX for payroll staff salaries. This would account for everyone working with students, such as teachers or paraprofessionals. Notice that increase also includes other things that they may need, such as tutorials or extra duty or stipends. So there's a lot in that function 11, 6100. 62XX means contracted services. That's allotted by the individual budget managers. There's things such as interpreters fees. 63XX represents the supplies needed in the instructional process. And 64XX is the miscellaneous fee for the instructional purposes. We can look at this process for all functions. This process helps us see the change from year to year. Notice in function 21, the salary declined, which means staff members were moved and transferred out of function 21 and into another function, particularly 23. Slide 18 is a look at functions 31 through 35. Guidance and counseling is function 31. It shows the payroll and the contracted services. And again, the adjustments up or down in object code 6200 to 6600 are accounted for in each budget manager's budget. What you should notice is that function 6100 pay functions with 6100 for their payroll, they've all increased to show the increase in the salary. Slide 19 shows functions 36 through 53. Some of the negatives represent the 20% that we reduced out of everyone's budget that we're withholding from the departments to reduce expenditures. And some of the expenditures are not due till the end of year of 2021, such as property insurance or some of the other expenditures that we have accrued. And those will be corrected when we make the adjustment to the budget in July 2020 with the 2018-19 ADA adjustment. And slide 20 represents function 61 through 93. And notice that we paid off function 71, that was in the notes payable, so we no longer have that to account for since that's been paid in full.
Okay, and we'll pause here and see if there's some questions that I can answer.
Any questions for Ms. Townsend on that section?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
No, how do y'all account for when do y'all show it as revenue whenever the teachers get a deduct? You know, as far as on a payback off their salary, do y'all roll that back into your revenue cost?
Actually, it offsets the expenditure. So when the, let's just say an employee terminated and they needed to pay us back because they were overpaid on their check and they gave us a check back, we would put it into the expenditure account because we need to show that there was less salary there versus having it as a revenue. We didn't really do anything to earn that revenue, to earn that money. So that's why we don't consider it a revenue. So we offset it against the expenditure.
Kind of like the same way if a teacher is currently working and they've used their allotted days and then they miss again, then they get back charged for days when they miss.
So it goes back into the expenditure that actually was charged to offset it, to reduce it, to show on our financial statements that we had less expenditure than we thought.
Do we track that to kind of get a whole as far as how that trends every year?
We do not, but we certainly can start looking in that direction. Yes, sir.
Just curious. I don't have anything else.
I don't have it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Townsend.
All right.
Slide 22 represents the general fund balance. This data has not changed. We have continued moving forward with the same estimates that we've had back in March.
So any questions on the fund balance of where we estimate to be?
No, ma'am, I do not have any.
Okay, slide 24 is the nutrition services proposed budget. And it's going to look a whole lot similar than this past year, except we're having a switch between federal revenue and local revenue. We are putting the high school back on the TDA, USDA program, and we're going to see a little bit more federal funding and a little less revenue. So we've tried to make that adjustment on our revenues. And as far as expenditures, we're looking at trying to have a little bit left over next year to include in the fund balance, because there's the request to purchase the serving line at the high school to get us ready to switch over the high school to the TDA program. So this is the nutrition service fund balance. We still have estimates in there for this year. We will have some bit of a loss due to the shortening of revenue at the end of the year for COVID-19. We do have in the estimates the amounts that we're getting for the home deliveries and all, so that is included in there, but there is still a cost difference of not as many kids participating. Also look under 2021 and the other adjustments, and that would be the anticipated cost for the serving line at the high school.
So are there any questions I could answer on the child nutrition's budget?
Any questions for Ms. Townsend on this one?
This is Eric. Is there any type of, for the serving line at the high school, is there any type of grants or anything that we could go out for supplementing that project by chance?
So as of today, we don't know of any that would actually apply toward a construction. We do have as an option the reimbursement if we were to ever choose to go out for a construction bond issue in the next 2 years. But as far as we know, as of right now, we don't have any grants available, and there's not been any to come through TEA or TDA.
Okay.
I think for those of you, when you look at your agenda for the next board meeting, that there's an item that's going to cover that, what she just mentioned about being able to potentially reimburse certain things if we have a bond down the road, and this would be one of them that would qualify for that, I believe, wouldn't it, Ms. Townsend?
Yes, sir. And you don't have to determine that at this point, but if you don't take the resolution and look at it and say, okay, that's an option, then you close the window and you're not able to get a reimbursement at all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and so our last topic is debt service. Are we ready for debt service? Okay.
Slide 27 is the recap of the debt service proposed budget. And again, we take our payments on our debt service and our bonds, and we put that into our expenditures, and we look at our state and our local revenue and our tax collections to come up with these numbers. And we feel like that that's in a good place, that our tax collections should cover the majority of, if not all of the debt expenditures. And then slide number 28 is a recap of the debt service fund balance. And this shows over time what has occurred and where we stand, and that we have a very good, healthy debt service fund balance that can only be used to pay down our debt.
So any questions or anything I can help clarify?
Any other questions for Ms. Townsend on the budget part that we've just seen?
No, sir, I have no further questions.
All right, if there are no other questions for her now on that, then we will move into the next part of our workshop. We have a few folks that are going to talk about some. What's that? Yes, you can.
So also, Ms. Townsend, reminding everyone that we'll be bringing our proposed budget in June for approval for 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
So just to follow up with that. So we also thought we'd take a few minutes this evening and talk a little bit about some of the planning that the team has been looking at in regards to finishing up the school year, starting the summer projects or programs, and then also what we might be looking at for the next school year. So a lot of course, moving parts that we talked about, but certainly a lot of planning for many scenarios that may impact us in the next several months. So we have, as you know, are putting together a team to look at many different options that might come our way in terms of beginning and restarting school in the fall. We'll be looking at some of the safety measures. We'll be looking at different calendars. We'll be looking at the different schedules and options. We'll be looking at restrictions that we might have and putting together a plan to start school safely, whatever that might look like. In some ways, we're not quite sure yet, but we'll be planning for options that will be planning to start school back in our fall. So with that, I would like to maybe turn it over to Ms. Ross to start with an overview of finishing up our school year, starting our summer programs, and then what we might be looking at for our future school.
All right, thank you. So in finishing up our school year, we've actually been doing a lot of evaluations as to where we are, what we're getting in terms of student participation, student location, et cetera, to always kind of give us an adjustment and an indicator for us to make certain that we're gauging the learner, and we're also gauging the depth of the curriculum with what the teachers are teaching. We have to keep complete alignment with curriculum, and in order to do that, I just wanted to kind of introduce you guys to like campus responsibilities. With that is in conjunction with the curriculum department is constantly monitoring and assessing the curriculum and what we're putting out in our lessons, and making certain that our lessons are meeting the depth and breadth of what we need to cover for those standards, so that we're not creating more gaps. So with that, I assure you and wanted to kind of just share with all of you that we have a variety of different systems and procedures that we've been following to make certain that we're implementing that. Because, you know, as we're moving into summer and as we're moving into next year, we really need to have a good, clear, concise answer and clean data that can give us some kind of predictor or indicator should a pattern like this reappear. And so leaving the year with, you know, the lack of having, you know, face-to-face instruction, and leaving the year with that, we've had to really do a lot of brainstorming together, essentially, in order to really be able to kind of gauge, okay, what's going on in our class, and does that give us really some good indicators as to instructionally and academically, with the level that our kids are engaging, are they giving us enough data back to really kind of substantiate a sampling of fourth 9 weeks? Like, you know, this would be a really good predictor. But then on the other side, we also wanted to gauge the more of the formal assessment. And with that, we are ending our year with, we have a rubric that was created on the high focus standards. And so with that, we have in all of our math and our ELA, we have basically this rubric that it's kind of like a progress monitoring tool. And it's very similar to portfolio development. And we did some intense training over it with our folks here in the CNI team, but then trained our coaches as well. And then they went back to campuses and we calibrated with teachers, and the teachers are actually getting some more standardized type data so that we can really see where our gaps are and analyze all that data to be able to identify some major gaps that maybe we need to concentrate on that will set the stage for our summer learning. So, and knowing all of that, that's what we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes and making certain that our grades are as representative as they can be, which is why we stayed with the regular average grades that we have in our grading guidelines, because we wanted to have enough clarity of information of what we can do with those kids that we have to provide summer assistance and summer learning to, but then also having to keep in mind what the beginning of the year may look like to jumpstart some of those kids, and compact curriculum. And the compacted curriculum actually will be another spiraling level of us creating curriculum, which is what we're planning on this summer by taking that data and then really being able to concentrate on what kind of groups do we create when we recommence school, be it, in person and, virtual or whatever that may look like. What would we do with those groups, and how would we be able to make certain that we're compacting the curriculum so that students can catch up if we didn't cover it in summer and we didn't cover it. If we didn't get it covered in the last 9 weeks or in the summer, as well as we would like. So we're also looking at a variety of other things as well in terms of going through our required grade placement committees and going through everything that is expected for us to have to take into consideration for those students that may or may not actually benefit from being advanced to the next level versus potentially needing a little bit more than remediation. So those are some of the things we've been looking at as well in order to give us clear indicators of how to handle the summer. So in moving toward what our summer looks like, again, based on all of this data that we're collecting, we're really trying to, we're looking at it through two lenses, and the two lenses that we have to look at it through is the adult learning, which, obviously sets the stage for the student learning. And with the adult learning, again, we've been assessing all of this data as it comes in, looking at the trends of students in terms of their participation. And then we'll look at this last benchmark of the rubric that we're using for the end of the year progress monitoring based on the math and the ELAs. And we'll actually start creating what we need to concentrate on in terms of our curriculum development for teachers and for the rest of the adult learners. And then what we need to look at in terms of data to help us start formulating the student learning and what that will look like, be it we're allowed to either to come back in person or that we're, going to create virtual experiences as well. So with that, we have been working, with campuses, and we have teachers, and we have a variety of different methods that we're going to approach summer in order to really kind of canvass every student in Santa Fe ISD, trying to engage by, somewhat incentivizing a variety of what we would call like summer, learning activities. And with that, we have already created quite a few of 100% participation, if they choose, activities from our stream camp, our summer stream challenges, in which students get to be involved in a lot of mathematics, engineering, science, challenges. And then also we have our reading initiatives that we're partnering with May S. Bruce. Our campus libraries, librarians are coming up this summer as well. And with these reading challenges, we're incentivizing through tiers students with the literacy, and really trying to get the kids to read, because all research shows that if at minimum we can get books in kids' hands and they can really be able to read and engage in that reading, that we'll be able to successfully close some gaps in the fall very easily. So with that, and knowing that we have the literacy challenge, we also know, and one of our things that we've really been looking closely at is your historic, and I don't mean just in Santa Fe ISD, your historic literacy challenge when it comes to learning to read versus reading to learn. So when you're looking at learning to read, your kindergarten and your first grade, that is typically during this time where you'll see exponential development sometimes of students and their ability to comprehend and, recognize sounds and words. And I have to tell you, one thing that I'm going to 100%, have to give a shout out to all of our pre-K, kinder, and first and second grade teachers. The progress monitoring that's going on within the homes is almost as good as being in person, because they're actually having the students perform these tasks in front of them. However, being that we don't want our students to lose traction on that, every one of our kinder and our first grade students will get a literacy backpack that will be given to them. And it has about 6 different high literacy level books. And our coaches and our teachers are actually going to be designing some interactive type of modules for parents and families on how to really kind of continue to model for students to read, and all of the variety of behaviors and habits that students are going to have in order for them to be able to try to close those gaps, so that whenever they come back in the fall, we actually have them still within that. So we're taking those focused readers for all kinder and all first and really creating some adaptable units for them that parents can really become a part of as well. And so we're really kind of excited about that. And that was all made possible through the instructional continuity grant that we received from TEA for this time in interim, to make certain that we're being able to close the gaps. So then when you go beyond all of the variety of just different challenges and things like that, we've talked and been working with technology. Kip and his crew are totally on board for that as well. We want to keep the laptops in the hands of the students. We finally have them in the right, hands, and minus a couple of things that we've had to troubleshoot in terms of internet, accessibility. We really feel like kids will be more inclined to participate in these challenges for the sake of, they're getting bored as well. But also the incentivizing is something in which, is getting them a little bit more excited. A little bit more of the challenge has to do from, the older kids, but we're really trying to think out of the box in terms of, getting them more involved, even if it comes to potentially, well, this is not, in stone, but potentially even involving them maybe in doing some mentorship with our kids virtually if necessary. So we're really trying to think out of the box to engage people as much as we can. Now, when it comes down to our summer school, and we met on this yesterday, all of the campuses and myself, we're looking at a variety of things. So there's some standards right now that are, what you would consider non-negotiable from TEA. And right now, we're having to apply for some waivers. And what I mean is the state of Texas, in terms of like the United States Department of Education, which are still like requiring 120 hours over the summer for our ESL students. And in reality, right now, there's a big concern with that in terms of like, how can we really be able to meet that in this capacity? Because a lot of that authentic learning has to with our ESL population has to take place in person. So that's out right now, but we're still planning as if we are going to do that. And then we're looking at our special populations as well, of what is required for us to do, and then what we're going to do also in order to increase participation with those learners. So when we come into that, we really wanted to kind of say what would be something that would really be probably our best bet in the summer that would help us most based on research, try to help kind of get kids and their gaps closed. And so, in working with some of our other districts in Region 4, we're kind of coming up with a consensus of like a summer school camp. We're going to put it off more toward July so that it'll be more of a jump start into the beginning of the year. And we're identifying students, like our highest need students, that would really need this jump start. And it will be full day, full day, 5-day camp. We're solidifying all the details of what that would look like, because while we're planning what it would look like if we could do it in person, we're also planning what it's going to be like if we're doing it virtually as well, and the accountability of that. So anyway, those will be very specific though, targeted groups that we know will need this extra assistance, and the timing of that will be as close to the start of the beginning of the year so that students actually have that recall and they're able to show us also during that time maybe how much even more they've missed, so that we can make some better decisions on having those plans beforehand before they come into the school year, to set them up for success and close those gaps. So then lastly, we're still working with our long range plans. We have subcommittees that are looking at all of the initiatives that we have launched and that we're going to develop within instruction. And then the committee that Dr. Wall has mentioned as well is we are, getting information from TEA, gathering information in terms of the ebb and flow of the patterns and what may be possibilities. And we're trying to be able to kind of like put in perspective maybe a variety of ways that would accommodate should COVID-19 or something put us in a situation in which we're going to need relief built into the master schedule. So we're in the genesis, the beginning of all of this, but hope to have a lot more research and data and information to kind of be able to see what might be some possibilities in order to prepare. So to summarize all of that, I would just say preventative is what we're looking, proactivity is what we've been working under, so that we don't have to knee jerk and we don't have to have kids lose out on learning when it comes down to any of these situations.
Tim, I have a question for you. When you talked about the summer things and potentially having these camps in July, how imperative is it? I know that the commissioner is out there now talking about some things and nothing that's been mandated yet. And I know y'all are going to talk about this probably a little more in a minute, but with potentially starting school earlier in August than some districts may have planned on starting, how imperative, when do you need to know some of these things to finalize those plans for the summer? In other words, if it's left up to the board, when do you need action from us in changing that calendar if it has to be changed, if the commissioner doesn't change it for us? Or is that something that is critical to you or not critical at this point in planning those things?
Right now, I mean, if you're talking about in terms of looking at proposed options of, a variety of flexibility and calendars, I mean, obviously, that is part of our charge as the task force to kind of look at that. I would probably assume that it would be something in which we're going to be finalizing, I believe, Dr. Wall, probably around June?
Yeah, our hope is to have the meetings through June and have a recommendation in July for the board. So that would be our hope, given the information we have at the time. So it's going to have to be based on if there are any restrictions that we know of. And just as a side note, and I know that there's been a bit of discussion and communications regarding calendars and start dates and those kinds of things, but that really is a local decision and something that the board and our team will recommend and our board will make that decision. That is not under the direction of the state or commissioner at this time. So that will be something that we will work with the team on, presenting information to share recommendations and ideas with the board. And we're hoping for July.
So I'm going to make a comment out there just for all of the members as well as the attendees watching and the general public. Obviously, I think July, unless, something obviously changes with commissioner coming out with public statements, what we can and cannot do. But just the main question I have, obviously, we just went into, within a week's time, we went from spring break and into the digital virtual learning environment. Should we have to do something drastic with the academic calendar? Does July give us enough time to then make the necessary moves we need to do to start our school, say in August or whenever that date may be?
So,
great.
okay, Dr.
great.
Wall, okay.
Yes, I'll be happy to. And then Kim certainly add to that. So I think the difficulty, so ideally we approve this calendar in December. So that's the adequate time to truly know to plan and know what curriculum scope will be based on that. So no, it's July's not truly ideal time, but hopefully if we can meet through June and we have a better understanding if there's any restrictions, how much that might impact us, and if we want to start early, if we want to change our calendar. I wouldn't ideally want to do it in July, but we'll have to kind of adjust to the changing world, really. So with this team, I think it will give us several scenarios. So it's sort of like we've been planning from day one on this with different contingencies, whether we were going to open back up here and whether we were going to have virtual learning and to what extent, and packets delivered and all of those things that we've adjusted along the way. So we'll continue to do that with planning with different scenarios so that we can turn on a dime and go full speed ahead. But
Okay.
It's a great point, and I appreciate you saying that.
I do still have one other question, though, that I want to back up just a little bit. What I don't want to have happen is I probably jumped the gun just a slight bit. I want to make sure, Kim, that your team has adequate time. If this looks like we may be really talking about starting earlier in August because we want to use some of the commissioner's suggestions about the longer breaks and all those things he's throwing out there, I don't want to put your team under the gun that you're trying to get summer things going while we're in the background saying, well, we want to start school. And I'm just going to throw a date out there, August the 1st. I don't even know what day of the week that is, but I don't want to put you in a bind and your team in a bind when we're looking at these other things. So everybody needs to be working together with the committee that you've kind of put together and all that to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that, because we don't want the kids to miss out on the plans of the summer because we're trying to start the school earlier next year, if that makes sense, what I'm saying.
It does, and I appreciate you saying that, because the reality is this, and I had the Peems and the Skyward ladies up here today. So we were looking at the original calendar that you guys passed, and one of the things, and you may remember this, so I'll bring it up anyway. One of the things that was a little bit more unique about this calendar, we've been a district operating under District of Innovation, and with that, we weren't locked into you cannot start until the third, Monday in August. So because of that, we went ahead and shortened the school year. The committee, the DEIC committee, when we looked at a variety of options that we voted on, this was the one that had a little bit more time for students to come back earlier and for teachers to come back earlier in the school year. So when we were looking at that kind of information today, and I was talking to the curriculum department about that today, I don't know, because I know we have to, look at all these options, but in reality, I'm not so certain that anything would necessarily have to be altered at the beginning, because we would need, honestly, we talked about, we would need at least that front loading time, in which we've shortened the new teacher time. We've compacted their time more with their colleagues during that colleague. We have all of these initiatives ready to launch in terms of not new initiatives. I'm talking about reinforcing deeper initiatives that have come out of like our long range planning. And so if we are able to kind of at least stick to that, and then look at if we have to follow, certain advisements from the commissioner, then we could actually build that in, because the intersessional calendar, some of those options that I'm sure y'all seen because it's been all over the news, but builds in like those kind of slide rule breaks if necessary, but you also can build in some intervention and things like that in it. So, I mean, the reality is, I think launch time, we would still be good even if you made that decision in July, because we looked anyway at bumping that back. And that was the original calendar that passed. Um, Starting it any earlier than then, I'm going to be honest with you in terms of, I mean, because it is going to be what it is, right? I mean, we can't predict in terms of like who's going to come back, in person, who's not, and, all of that. But in terms of backing it up any more than that, I'll be honest with you. I think as far as knowing that your student achievement is only as good as your professional learning, from your adults, I would hesitate to want to move it back anymore, because that learning is imperative to the kids learning. And every teacher that you would probably talk to would tell you the same, that if they had to start off the year to where we had to actually compromise that additional student support that we're trying to give, and that week that we're wanting to give in July, that kind of like head start week, jump start week, I think it would be a little bit nerve wracking, because we need to take all this data that we're collecting. It's going to take a little time for us to really start looking at the trends and looking at what students fit these profiles. And I'd really like to at least be able to spend as much as possible in June and July for us. Like I said, the preventative or the proactive work that we're trying to do is really start getting teachers to look at these groups before we even have that in context with our master schedule, so that our kids are already being set up kind of with the intervention acceleration type phase, and teachers already have those predictors to say, okay, so this is where they're going to struggle. So in our scope and sequence for curriculum, this is what we're going to go ahead and we're going to decide for third grade. Let's say this is where we're going to start with this skill, where we wouldn't generally, you know what I mean? So we'll be using a lot of that data at that beginning of the year, back to school learning as well, because it's going to be all the indicators of how we're going to support our kids. The rest is just logistics, I think,
Well, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I think the plan, this is unprecedented times, and you're trying to determine now how these kids are coming out of the change since spring break and going to the digital learning environment, and what you need to do. I'm going to use a term, to catch up in the summer if need be, but then set it as a start to roll into that next year. I think that's a great plan. I just wanted to make sure that you have the time to do that. And because in just reading this stuff, and I know based on, and Dr. Wall said it a while ago, what the commissioner has out right there, there's not going to be a thou shalt, but he sure is throwing a lot of indications as to what TEA would like to see. And
right.
I just don't want to get in such a push to try to plan in case we have COVID problems during the year, to start early and get it messed up before we even get started. That's kind of my whole point. I want to make sure that the summer goes well, not just for summer school students, but for the teachers and the new teachers that you're going to be bringing in, and all those folks as well.
And that is huge. And I want to tell you on behalf of, like, I can guarantee you everyone, and those of you who are, potentially married to people in the educational system, it would be very well appreciated. And here's just one little interesting thing that I think is going to be kind of interesting as well, is, anything that's out on TEA right now is giving you the gap analysis of where students will regress and all of this kind of stuff. Well, we really want to see, because, we, and I'm not saying it's great or not ever, but we all decided to stick with our authentic curriculum, right? And we all decided to utilize what we have in terms of creating like the framework and implementing that, with students for curriculum. So we gave them raw curriculum that was already developed. We had professional learning that was, already embedded within these weeks. And so we never lost those systems of teachers having to refine their practice and focus on what we were doing. So with that, compared to some of the other districts who either went straight to Edgenuity or went to like kind of these pad programs, with that, we want to see, first of all, how really wide the gaps are with those kids, and then the other piece is we want to see with summer and with leaving laptops in their hands and creating these summer challenges that really are basically, well, if kids are watching at home, I'll just, kind of ruin the surprise, but secretly embed those standards that need to be reinforced in all of these challenges. And then that focus summer to see really kind of, what did that do for us and what kind of information, because that really can give us a lot of indication about future orientation if things start changing in terms of the new world. Like if it's, hey, kids can actually, it's like, feel like, for instance, I looked at something like our homebound program. Okay, so our homebound program, it's great, but you typically rely on a teacher or multiple teachers, but it's never, always the teacher that's the well-rounded teacher once you get to high school. So they're really kind of there being the facilitator for some kids that are on homebound between the school and the child, but they might not have, advanced, trig or whatever degree. So they're always having to kind of be that mediator. Well, now, if we have a student that's on homebound, is there a variety of different ways that we've even learned and crossing that chasm of not being afraid of technology, anymore? Are there ways that actually we can potentially, and I don't know this, but like potentially not send a kid on homebound, but give them credit, you know what I mean? Get attendance, ADA for them, but they still get to have that authentic learning from teachers. And we would just have to look at potentially, what would that look like in terms of, our funds, et cetera, of what we do to give extra duty pay for those teachers, things like that. So there's a lot of things that I think are just kind of interesting for us to see what did this get us. Because the last thing, actually, I forgot to mention, y'all, and what was kind of interesting is, and if you've been looking like in the Chronicle and things like that, a lot of schools are reporting that there's just no shows of kids. I mean, like hundreds of kids, like HISD, it's like, oh, there's been kids that we haven't even, been able to locate. The thing that I think is interesting, and I have to give it to the principals for making certain that they're on it with their campuses, is everybody started out at the very beginning, week one, with, a variety of kids that were untraceable. And that not being because they were untraceable, but it was because we didn't have fully the launch of technology, or we didn't have, the full update on packets. But if you look at every single school, so at all of our elementaries, there were, we have it all the way down to, and these were the no contact, because there's a difference between no contact and then the ones that we have participation issues, show up 1 week and do their work. And then 2 weeks later, hey, where's your work? Okay, well, I'll make it up. But the no contact, so like, for instance, at Barnett, which was a very similar pattern, you had week one, like 17 students that we just couldn't find contact. But by the time we had the wellness checks, and you go all the way down to week 7, you have 0 students that have not been accounted for, that are enrolled and that have had 100% contact. Now, participation may look a little different, but still our participation is, in between that 95 to 97%. And that is teachers busting it, making certain that they are talking to those kids and reaching out to those families. And then, as you look at the junior high and high school, it trends a little bit more in terms of, those, and I would say sometimes that's a motivational factor too, of some of those kids that are hard to get a hold of. But for week 1 at the junior high, it was 113 students were no contact. We couldn't totally locate them, but we are at week 7 with 0 that we've been able to level that out. The high school, out of, what, 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 kids, whatever. It's pretty much stayed about average with its trends, which is, kind of typical in terms of us with the whole attendance and all of that. But we started, I think, at the beginning on week 1 was like around 80-ish. And then now we're like down to like 68 total for high school. But that goes from our ISA all the way
All
to,
across.
every kid. So that's been a little bit different too, in terms of what some of our fellow districts are kind of reporting with students even being present. So I'd kind of like to see, what is that impact?
Well, that sounds like some good news though, actually, that we are making contact where other districts might not be quite as successful with that.
Right.
So I want to, because they contact me too, because I'm a parent as well. And the poor teachers that contact me, and then they have to go through the whole interview process of how school life is going and giving them quizzes on everything. But I know it's been difficult for them to do a lot of that, but it's making a big difference. All of this is making a huge difference. I am thrilled to hear that you plan on leaving those laptops there. And I would like for us in the future to figure out how to get more technology in their hands to use. I want us to take advantage of this situation we've been put in and use it going forwards. The technology aspect especially, but all the other things we've learned.
Well, I think that at some point in time, the state, the nation, there's going to be folks want to know how students fared out of all this, and what and how they're going to prove that, and how they're going to test that. I know that's all still to be developed, but this has started a lot of people to talking about things, what's working and what's not working for their kids at home, and doing it digitally, and their experiences with their teachers, and doing video conferencing with teachers and those type things. And we have to learn from all that. And obviously, Kim, your team, a lot of the information you've just presented are things that are coming from that. There's been a lot of folks bring up, Mr. Davenport has brought up a talk of a change potentially in the schedule, that because of the COVID stuff and the things we've learned, going to a different schedule. There have been parents that have come forward and now, and because of this, they're learning and they're seeing things with their kids, year-round schedules and those type things. So I think we have to capture all these learnings as we're assessing how the students and how the staff is doing with this, and take advantage of that in the future. Not that we need to knee jerk in July and totally change things unless it really makes sense. But what I'm getting at, we have to take all these learnings and then utilize that in the future for future calendars, and the way we hire folks, or the way we teach, and all of that needs to be captured by the successes and the failures from this COVID pandemic that we've been put through.
Kim, obviously this whole COVID thing didn't do us any favors, and it's really kind of frustrating, since I know just about all of your teams were on what appeared to be a path to higher success, and then this gets thrown in our face. Just what's your gut feeling on how bad this set us back potentially, or where we're at going into next year? And I know you don't have those answers. It's, what's your gut feeling on it?
I can tell you that, before this, we knew what some of our targeted areas of instruction needed to be, and what our, academic areas that we still needed to focus on and reinforce. And because we started collecting data, I do know that was still something, and was still data that we're planning from, that we've implemented in our curriculum during this remote time. So, like I said, if you used a standardized curriculum and you just pulled it in from something that's out there, bought something programmatic, you have a lot of just, you don't really know about the depth and complexity of those standards. I'd like to say that, I mean, at least we're going to, I believe, have more kids still coming along. I'm glad 3/4 of the year was able to lay a solid foundation. That's when our curriculum's packed the most. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Do I think that academically we're gonna be
Oh,
able
I
to
mean,
still
it was a
show growth?
setback.
Yeah,
I mean, we know
yeah.
it
But
was a
I mean,
setback. I mean, there's
but do I
nothing
believe that we're gonna still be able to show, some growth and development? Yes, because of the nature of what our our teachers and our campuses have decided to do when we made, the decision, hey, we're going to stay true to the course so that we can see if it makes impact in this remote environment as well.
Do you think there's going to be kids that progress better this way versus normal classroom environment?
I don't know. I mean, that's why I think it's going to be interesting, is to be able to see what is this going to, you know what I mean? What is this going to be able to do? So that's also setting us up for beginning of the year of looking at a variety of ways, which that's again what the instructional team's been meeting about, looking at ways that we'll get snippets of data from the kids at the very beginning of the year in a more formalized method, in order for us to really say, okay, how much really did they fall behind, and and then where do we have to fill in the blanks. My team, in next month in June, at the very beginning, we're attending an online conference that is addressing all of this, and it's based on all of the data, and basically to help guide us in terms of what do you need to focus on the most in order to get the absolute best from kids at the beginning of the year. So we're hoping that that's going to give us some tools to really make sure that we're focusing in, and we're not, what can we cut out and what can we focus on to make certain our kids are getting those gaps closed.
Gotcha.
I want to make some comments, and mine's more for the general public out there. We all obviously we recognize that some of the students that are out there have challenges more so than other students. Some students are able to learn at the standard rates, and possibly maybe at a little bit more advanced rate. But I'm hopeful that the biggest takeaway from this, at least for Santa Fe ISD, is the learning that the parents are actually taken away from this whole thing. Each one of the parents now are having, for the most part, work with their child. It's building home lives. It's actually showing different skill sets that they can actually meet together. And if the child is even helping the parent in some things. So from my personal perspective, I think there's going to be a better respect for what teachers do in the industry and in the classroom, because now all the parents are recognizing what has taken place, what they go through with only their intimate family, whether it be 2 or 3 individual kids in their own family or a few more, but each teacher goes through 22 on average per classroom. So I'm hopeful that we get in front of this and we ask that each one of the community members, parents, and everybody else that has children in our district, they support the classroom, they support the discipline and everything else that goes along with it. And I think truly in the long run, I think all of our kids' educations are going to be a lot stronger from this whole thing. That's just my hope and my desire, but I truly believe that is going to take place. So thank you, Kim, for your curriculum and the teachers and staff that you've been working with, and obviously Kip and his team to bring this digital environment. Should we ever have to use this going forward, or we have a hybrid of it, I don't know, but I just want you to know, and the rest of the members know, that I appreciate all the efforts and everything going into this, and that I'm extremely encouraged that we can do other things with the different committees that have been put together, that as we go through and we get some of these snippets of data, we start getting a little bit more of what, as Mr. Hertenberger just said, or are we getting that children are faring better in this environment, and all that kind of comes forward, we might be able to do a lot better job at meeting children's needs for those that learn at a faster rate and learn at an average rate and learn at a little bit slower rate than those. And I truly am more encouraged today than I ever have been due to this. So
Yeah. Oh, and I am too. One of the things that we got to remember is that the majority of us were not born in a digital environment, but our kids were. And so we're speaking more their language now than anything. So with that, I've actually seen more examples of engagement than we have before.
And man, that's exactly why I don't want us to overlook any possibilities here with this entire thing, because it sounds weird, but we are. I'll speak for myself. I'm getting old, and you're right. I mean, we use technology. I'm in the technology field, but it's nothing compared to what our kids are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to overlook something that could be beneficial to us in the future to use. And then that's not to say what we're doing now is, not correct or anything like that, or that anybody's doing a subpar job right now. It's just, I want to keep our eyes open to everything. I think we have a lot of possibilities here.
and that's the one thing, James, that I've kind of, Mr. Norman had alluded to. My comments and conversations to him, I also had the same conversation with Dr. Wall. There are plenty of opportunities out there from this that we take away, such as a flexible schedule. I've mentioned out loud that I'd be interested in doing the data behind a 4-day school week, for children and things of that nature, or a hybrid of some of that where you do an AV schedule. So I just want the rest of the members to know that I've reached out to Dr. Wall and and Mr. Norman. And now that the rest of the cabinet members are on this call here, that I'm in favor of being on the cutting edge and being able to try something. And should it not work, it's okay to say it didn't work and we still try to do something different as we learn through this. But I'm encouraged right now that we should be the first ones. And I know we're not going to make everybody happy, and we're not here to make everybody happy, but if we've learned some great things from COVID, that we can then increase the ability of our children to be that much further along as they get ready to go into their post high school years, whether it be a trade school, college, whatever they enter into. I'm willing to entertain that and take a good, strong chance that we've done something better for our students and staff.
And even in addition to that, I mean, and again, I'm not saying any of these things are something we should do, because who knows, there's tons of think tanking that needs to take place and tons of work that y'all would have to do to make any of these changes. But just things like, and these are just possibilities. I mean, is there a possibility that some kids could do remote learning if they choose, if they qualified, like a collegiate student does? If that was a possibility, which I don't even know if it would be, would that somehow reduce student teacher ratios in the classroom? Because you're taking some of those kids out of the classroom. They're capable of doing their stuff on their own at home. Would that reduce those ratios? Or would it potentially make it worse because you have teachers that are assigned to these online students? I mean, those are answers. I don't have the answer to those questions, but it's all things that I want to keep in our minds and consider all these kind of new possibilities. And it's not something we're going to do overnight. It's not something we should do overnight, but it's definitely things that we need to keep in mind and look at.
Great comments. Kim, did you have anything else in your update for us? All right.
No, thank you.
Mr. Atkins, you have anything you need to update us about?
Well, so, we're getting to the end of the year. We've already started on a maintenance and operations side, some of our summer cleanings and stuff like that to get a head start. So if school were to go to an altered schedule to start in the fall, if start earlier, hopefully we'll be out of their way and be done with things. We're doing things obviously differently that way. On the food service side, they're still feeding kids. We're up to almost 1,500 kids that they're feeding, delivering meals to 4 days a week. We're delivering 5 lunches and 5 breakfasts to each student. So they're continuing that. And then I think we got clearance to feed them through summer. We're working through the logistics of how we get them that food. I don't know if we have clearance for the transportation to be funded. So we're working through that. And Cherie and Mark and I are working real hard on that stuff. Cherie's working with TDA to get all that information. And then when it comes to preparing for summer or for start of school, we're putting together committees and plans to be as flexible as we can and be prepared for whatever it looks like, whether it's a standard start or a altered start or more remote learning and stuff like that. We're there to support it in any way we can. And then we're looking at cleaning processes and how do we holistically clean facilities from the custodians all the way up through every person that's in the building, and take responsibility from that to make sure that we're not spreading virus and I think what we want, one of the gains we'll get out of that on the clean side of this is hopefully we'll increase our or decrease the flu outbreaks and the stomach bugs and all that, because I think we're going to have such a high emphasis on keeping things clean. What do you touch? Keeping common touch areas clean and things like that. But we should hopefully reduce a lot of that, and maybe we can get our attendance up when we do go back to a standard environment, or what we consider a standard environment for learning. So I think there's a lot of things to gain, but we're doing a lot of learning and a lot of planning over the next 2 months to get ready for whatever we get thrown at us. So
Good deal. Any questions for Bob?
The food delivery, I've had a few questions. The food delivery, everyone is eligible for that now, right?
That's correct. That's
and
correct.
It's fully funded.
It's fully funded right now. The meal reimbursement's funded, and I believe the transportation part is funded too. We've got, last number was 1,464, I think was the last number we had this week. We still take applications. People can still apply to get on board, and it takes about so if they apply by Tuesday of this week, they'll get meals next week. If they apply by Tuesday next week, it'll take about a week for us to get them routed and planned. So
because I've had some individuals, ask that wouldn't normally qualify for free and reduced.
And they don't even have to be Santa Fe students. They have to live in the Santa Fe ISD district. 18 and younger is eligible for the food. So you could have one child in an elementary class and 2 children that aren't school age, and you could get meals for all 3. So
that's why I brought that up, because I wanted maybe the general public that's watching this to be aware of that as well. And if you don't normally qualify, my answer to that is you pay taxes. Okay. So don't feel guilty. If you need it and you need the services and they can benefit you, sign up.
Well, and the thing is with this, and a lot of people hurting or not able to work and stuff, when they didn't qualify before, they may qualify now.
Exactly.
And then once they go back to work, they may not qualify again. But if they're getting unemployment or they're not working, they definitely qualify. But that piece doesn't even matter now. 18 and younger, we can feed for free, and we will deliver to their house. So.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Ms. Townsend, do you have any other updates for us today?
We do have some things happening with transportation, as well as with the business services, planning on what the year may look like, planning on what may be needed. One of the biggest things that we're doing is we're making sure that we're staying very closely connected to the associations we belong with, whether it's transportation, TA, PT, or whether it's with business with TASBO, and also with our counterparts in the surrounding districts, to make sure that we're in tune to what some of their solutions are for whatever may happen in the fall, and to make sure that we're prepared with options to bring to the table once it begins to start to formulate. So definitely working, definitely keeping our ear down, listening to what's going on.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Townsend?
And just on another note, FEMA has gone back and forth on covering the cost for the transportation. We definitely have the meal reimbursement covered. That is covered by TDA, but FEMA can't seem to decide. You know, they'll have to do an answer one day and another answer another day. But we continue on because it's the right thing to do to make sure that we support our students in need. So yes, please, we have a whole bunch of information on the Child Nutrition website. They're doing a great job of answering those emails. We have ways that people can get any kind of assistance they need. So please reach out.
Do we have just a guesstimate at what that transportation cost would be if they refuse to pay it? Not that we're going to stop doing it anyway, but I'm just curious.
So as of right now, for the months where it's only the fuel and the use of the busage, we're averaging about $100 a week. So it's been about 9 weeks. What we're concerned with is in June, we do have TDA approval to deliver meals in June, and that we're going to continue. The problem in June is people become off their contracts. So then we'll begin paying the salaries for the people working to deliver the meals and paying the salaries on top of their annualized pay to prepare the meals, which TDA again will reimburse the child nutrition side, but it's the driver's cost and the driver's fuel that we would absorb with that process. But that would be through the months of June.
Any other questions for Ms. Townsend? Thank you, ma'am. Patty, you got anything for us? Any updates today?
Yes, sir. I just during this whole digital journey, I can just tell you that the HR and PR department, we've been focused on managing employee, campus, and community communications. We've been keeping the website updated with ongoing communications and virtual events that are occurring throughout the district. We've been posting job postings on our website, on Indeed, on our Region 4 TASA. We've also reached out, and some of the athletic postings have been placed on their association websites, of course on TMEA. So are y'all able to hear me? Okay, I thought maybe y'all couldn't. And then we've been helping and assisting with virtual interviewing and hiring, and we've been onboarding employees already, virtually of course, but continuing to issue contracts and working on contracts that will be coming to you at the board meeting on the 20th for our administrators. We've been also concentrating on employee morale, and we've been doing that through the website and through personal notes to the teachers and staff, through email, and then recognizing our students and our staff's accomplishments during this district closure. And then moving forward, we're going to continue our work in these areas that I've mentioned, but we're also going to be assisting in determining and supporting a rather robust communication plan for the safe return of our students and our staff to the 2021 school year, depending upon when that is, but we still will be very active in communications and assisting with all of those things. I can tell you it's been different for us. Human resources is just that. We're used to that one-on-one contact as all of us are as educators. But we've learned a lot of lessons too, a lot of ways to be possibly a little bit more efficient and using some forms that we can send virtually, and just being, partners with a lot of the departments and campuses. And so it's truly been a learning experience for us as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Patty? Okay, well, that is our workshop agenda. I did put on the agenda time for an executive session, but Dr. Wall doesn't have anything personnel wise or any safety items that we need to discuss right now. So unless one of the board members has something specifically that we need to go into executive session for, I'm just going to move on to communication. Dr. Wall, you have anything that you'd like to update us with?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all of you, every single one of our board members who are so supportive to our staff and our district and our students, and are also super supportive of the fact that we're going to take this situation that we've been put in, learn from it, maximize it, and make it better for all in Santa Fe ISD. So we appreciate your support in that. We have other than the board meeting on the 20th, which will begin at 6, we will also be recognizing and our Day of Remembrance on May 18th. It will happen virtually beginning at 10 o'clock. So we'll all be joining together to honor and remember those lives lost, injured, and impact on May 18th of 2018. So other than that, I don't have anything else unless you guys have any questions for us. But we again, we have a busy end of the school year, as we always will, with many activities and many events coming. So we appreciate all of you and all of our staff, all of our awesome teachers and support staff working really hard to make it all as good as it can for our kids.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Wall. Mr. Davenport, you got anything else for this evening?
Now, I just want to express my appreciation to the curriculum and instruction teams, the IT teams, and all the other supporting teams. I know HR and PR has done a tremendous amount of work. Kind of have firsthand knowledge with one of the PR people that's in my household, staying up a little bit later than normal on the computer, but it just goes to show that everybody is doing what they can. And if anything, it's bringing us together, and it seems like we're working harder to make sure that we do what's right still. And it's obvious. I mean, I've kind of enjoyed, in a way, Miss Townsend's, delivery of the budget workshop and things of that nature. It's given us a different perspective. You can obviously tell that time has been put into it and thought's been put into it. So it's a neat environment. I know that there are probably some naysayers out in the community, but I couldn't agree more with everybody else and saying that I think it's a great thing right now that we're coming together as a district and as a community and as families. So without a doubt, I'm antsy. I'm anxious. I'm everything about getting the next school year started. But I know we have quite a bit to cover before we can get to that time. So just again, thank you for everybody. And thank you for those of you that are truly putting your best foot forward and trying to put the district in the forefront.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hertenberger, you have anything else to add today?
I'd like to say thank you to all the ones that presented as well. And I would like to echo earlier, I think we need to continue like what we're doing, keep thinking out of the box, because it's not a matter of fact if, it's just when it's going to happen, and to stay ahead of the curve instead of, let's be proactive instead of reactive. I'm just I like it. I mean, I have my son who is in the 504 who learns better at home, and I asked him if he would still want to go back next year, but he wants to go back to school. And his deficit is social, but he actually still wants to be in the environment. So kind of mixed emotions there.
That's good, though.
Thank you all for the reports went well. Kim, thank you for having to regurgitate all that information to us. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Patty.
Thank you, sir.
To all the moms out there as well.
Mr. Grassmuck, have anything else for us?
Just thanks to Ms. Townsend for the budget information and our always A+ financials that we seem to have. And just thanks to all the teachers. I mean, I know that a lot of the teachers, like I said earlier, I've talked to a lot of them on the phone and reached out to some of them, and it's difficult. I know. Please just hang in there with us. You're doing a great job. Just we're almost to the finish line. Just hang in there. Keep up the good work, and we do appreciate everything that y'all are all doing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kelly, have anything for us today?
Yes, I ran into a friend / teacher at HEB the other day, and I gave her a hug, and she's really happy that I did that because she said that nobody wants to even touch anymore. So then we went into how much more work she's doing right now, and she went on and on and on, and then finally I got to, well, I know there's some things you like about being home, and she got a big smile on her face, and she did mention a few things that she likes, but I'm very proud of you all for taking this situation and advancing it like you have. And I'm really excited to hear that y'all want to use the things that we've been pushed into doing and moving forward in the future with it. It's really exciting, and I'm proud of you all for what you've been doing. So thank you all for presenting. Sorry I was late. I got home from work a little late, and I didn't want to get on the phone. It looks a little disoriented when you're on the phone, but just thank you all for what you do, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Logan, have anything for us today?
Yeah, I'd also like to thank Ms. Townsend and Kim. That was great. Everything. Thanks for the information. And I'm also looking forward to what we've learned so far. And I think everything's going to be great when we get through all this. But thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Snyder.
I just want to say, like everybody said, thank you to all the teachers, everybody else. Make sure y'all know, let them know how much we appreciate what they're doing in these difficult times. And thank you all for everything supporting the school at this time. You know how I feel. I appreciate everything y'all do. Y'all be safe.
Thank you, sir. I guess I want to definitely thank everyone. This has been a good workshop. It's been very informative. A lot of information there. And there's some, I'm just going to say, some anxiety and some misconceptions and things out there with the appraisal district stuff that's going on right now and some of the things going across the county. So I know that some of the information you put together today, Ms. Townsend, we would not have normally included in a budget workshop. So that was really good. And it gives us a little more to, as we talk to people out in public, trying to explain where the school district fits in the overall scheme of things. So thank you very much for that. And Kim, Patty, Bob, thank y'all for everything you're doing back there. Just because, we're not face to face all the time anymore. It's still very obvious that there's a lot of work going on. Just because kids aren't sitting in their seats in the classroom, the learning environment is still there, and all the work that takes place behind the scenes is still there. So a big thanks to you and all your teams for what they're doing right now as we try to get to the end of this school year, and still we'll end May with a lot of unknowns about what next year will bring and all that. But just the fact that you have a plan, you're working on plans, you're developing these scenarios. And again, the biggest thing is that we learn from it as we move forward for what creates the best learning environment in the future. I think it just opens up all types of possibilities potentially. So again, thanks to everyone for what you do. Quick reminder, the board meeting has been moved to next Wednesday. So we meet on Wednesday, the 20th, and we will start at 6 o'clock with an executive session. And we do have some contracts and things like that to go over. So looking forward to seeing everyone next week. Y'all be safe, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Snyder made a motion. Who is going to second that motion?
Second.
Mr. Kelly seconded. All those in favor, just you can raise your hands or wave at me in the screen. And that is unanimous. Thank y'all very much. And thank you to all the people of the public that joined in, and y'all be safe.
Thank you.